But let's start by talking about narrative in video games. So, uh, video games can have all sorts of different, styles of narrative, right? They're not bound to one kind of thing. Most mediums aren't, but with games, it's a lot easier to twist the way that your narrative is told. So, for example, you have, these pretty linear games. Some people would describe these as cinematic games, especially The Last of Us or Metal Gear, which is heavily inspired by, like Western movies and such. Um, games that just, are more linear, do not really give you options to change the way the story plays out. That's option A, is you're just writing a story that has a beginning, middle, and an end. Lots of games do this. But, there are some games that are non-linear, but don't really give you a choice in like what happens, right? So for example, Return of the Obra Dinn, that was pretty popular a few years back. The game's like almost 4 years old now. That's wild. But oh, skipped ahead. Yeah, Obra Dinn. So for example, that game has a bunch of little vignettes, stories that are told to you. There, you don't get to change how they play out, but you can choose the order that you see them. And not every player experiences Obra Dinn the same way in the same order. In that same way, things like Smile for Me, where you interact with different characters and you sort of choose different paths. Visual novels are a pretty good example of like, you're not having a say in how stories play out, but you don't necessarily experience them in a fixed order. So that's a different way to go about narrative. Um, and finally, you have, emergent narrative, where you're sort of making your own fun, making your own stories. So, games like The Sims especially, you're setting out to make your own kind of narrative by saying, okay, I'm going to have these people, these characters, and this is what their life is going to be like. But as a game designer, the writers of The Sims 4 still have to decide, okay, there are some limits to what players can do in the game that sort of informs the narrative we want to tell. And that's true of any game with like emergent narrative. It's not infinite, even though it might seem like it. So, how do you write down, like, let's say you have in your head this grand idea of a non-linear narrative, choice-based game. At the very least, something that is not linear. How do you write that? How do you put that to paper? Well, there's this handy tool called Twine that has been used by some very smart people to make very cool things. So Twine, you can download it for free right now. It is a program that you can make, interactive stories in and share them as websites, basically, as HTML documents. And, it's a very easy to use tool. But, I think the most high profile thing that has been made with Twine is the Black Mirror movie that was released on Netflix that is interactive, called Bandersnatch. That was storyboarded in Twine because, that was just too complicated to write like a normal episode of Black Mirror. And then here are a couple other Twine games you may have heard of. I highly recommend You Are Jeff Bezos. It is a very fun video game. So, why would you want to use Twine? Well, one, it's very easy. You don't need to be a programmer. You don't even really need to know how game engines work because it's not a game engine. It is, a writing tool. It's got a very, usable graphical interface that we will be going over. And you can use it, by itself. Like, people release Twine games. In fact, most things made with Twine are just games made with Twine and nothing else really. Well, then that goes into like, customization. So if people are making games that are just based on Twine, then they're going to probably, put some of their own work into it. And, there's resources for that to learn how to like customize it with HTML and, extra scripting and stuff based on different like Twine versions. There are different like, APIs you can make with Twine. There's like Harlow Sugar Cube. I forget the exact terminology, but The Twine Grimoire is free on itch. There's 2 volumes. That's a very good resource for learning how to extend Twine beyond its basic usability. So let's go ahead and look at Twine itself. If I can share it here. Okay. So this is the start of a Twine project. You get a single untitled passage, and if you double click that, you can open it up. And so this is like a page in your story, right? So we can title this, first passage, and this will appear as a page in our like HTML document. So then you can sort of write anything here, like say, hello world, and then that'll get saved, and you can play it, you can test it, and then that is not being shared because it is in a different thing. But if you open up, Chrome, there it is. You'll see hello world, and that, is your first Twine page, basically. But that is the most simple of simple things to make with Twine. So if we go back to Twine, we can sort of see that there are lots of different tools here. Like we have links, we have, if statements, like only show text if certain conditions are met. You've got, text styles, all this stuff. So it's very useful. Once you make a link, like for example, we can turn this into a link. Yeah. So like, create the link. You can reveal hooks with it. That kind of thing. Basically, anything you'd want is possible with Twine. I'm not going to lie, I should have refamiliarized myself before this presentation. But for example, we have, this is a link now, and if we click it, it will also reveal hello world right here. If we go ahead and play that and reshare in Chrome, right? So, that gets replaced with our text here. So now let's get into branching paths. If we go back into Twine. Okay. So you can make new passages, basically. Right here, let's say this is our first choice result. Or, choice 1. And then we have choice 2. Right over here. And you can link passages together. So then if I say choice 1 and I create a link, we can make it go to a passage. Right, so go to this passage. Choice 1. Right. And then we can do that again for choice 2. Choice does not look like a word anymore. Okay. So as you can see, that creates links between our passages here. So then, to make sure that we did it right, we can say, choice 1 in the text here, and choice 2 in the text here. So again, pretty simple stuff. And then if we go back into our Twine demo, we see we now have our choices here. Our hello world is still here. And then if we go to choice 1, that takes us to choice 1. Go to choice 2, that takes us to choice 2. So you can begin to see the applications that Twine has in terms of, telling choice-based narratives. And this is very, very simple. You can do things like add images, custom CSS, play sounds even. You can, get links to web pages. In fact, let me open an old project that I have in Twine, because that will be a better illustration of what Twine can do. Because, I've had to use it for class before. So, for example, we have our test story here. So you can do things like saving and loading, creating, headers and footers, going to specific passages. It's very useful. So if we like, yeah. So text macros. Yeah, you can change text styles. You can do all sorts of things, and this will play different animations. I'm not sure if that will like only play for a short amount of time. Oh, chat. Yes, bungus. That was the test phrase I used. Yeah, let me share this. This is a lot of sharing back and forth, but that's unfortunately how Twine works. Right. So if you saw, what those different macros did, they're applying different sorts of effects to all this text. Very useful in certain situations, especially if you want to, add some pizzazz to your Twine story. So that's the very basics of Twine. Is there anything anyone would like to know how to do or has questions about in terms of, Twine? Okay. Yeah, a little on the shorter side, but Twine is a very, very useful tool, and I highly, highly recommend it. Um, yeah. Has anyone played any Twine games? Rest in peace.
I, I haven't I haven't played it, but I believe I was when I was working on a project, the members who built the game used Twine for narrative. So it was nice to see that um that it's possible to build a playable game group text. But no, I don't think I've played a game with Twine other than playtesting that game.
But yeah, as you can see, Twine is useful as a prototyping tool as well as like by itself. But I recommend, if you are a writer type, just make some Twine stuff by itself. It's, something quick you can put on your portfolio. Well, not quick, everything takes time, but you know, if you're not so programming inclined as some GDD majors, or if you're not even a GDD major and you just want to get into, interactive narratives, Twine is the way to go. So go forth and make cool Twine stuff. Anyone have any last questions or thoughts on Twine before we go over to project sharing?
Um, have you heard of Obsidian or used it at all?
Obsidian. No, I have not heard of that. Is that a different tool?
Um, yeah, just when you were demoing it kind of reminded me of it. It's a similar kind of like markdown text thing. I don't think it has the same like choice-based and sharing capabilities that Twine does, but I've used that for my writing and it's a really good organizational tool. It does like a little spider web map where you can like connect everything. So
Yeah, that's
it's a
cool.
useful tool.
Obsidian, there you have it. That's an alternative. But yeah, I do not recommend writing interactive narratives without some kind of tool like that to help you because, having it all in one text document is not helpful. Having that visual of like how different things connect is very, very important. Okay. So, that's our little Twine presentation. So we're about ready to go over to Discord for project sharing. Let's go to Discord, everybody. Bye-bye.